Now we're going to look at the conjunction even though. So even though is what we use a lot when we speak, and we use it to show that we have opposite ideas. So we use it to show that we have opposite ideas. Okay, so we always need two clauses. So there's a one sentence here, but it's separated into two, and we separate it with the comma. Okay, so you have these two clauses, and they are opposites. Even though it is hot, I'm still wearing a jacket. So usually when it's hot, you don't wear a jacket, but because we are using even though, we say the opposite. Even though it is hot, I'm still wearing a jacket. So they are opposites. And you'll note that we have the conjunction at the front, but there is no comma after this conjunction. The comma goes at the end of the clause, at the end of this part of the sentence. And even though is used a lot when we speak, it's probably the most common way of showing opposite ideas when we speak, but it is not academic writing. It's quite simple writing because it's what we use a lot when we speak. So there are some alternatives for more academic writing. So these are the first ones. The most common one is although. Okay, so although usually starts a sentence and there is no comma after the word. So you can see we have although, there's no comma. The comma always goes in between the two clauses, in between the two opposite ideas. Okay, so these two clauses don't match. Although I feel sick, I'm going to work late tonight. Okay, so you feel sick, but you're going to work late. The next one, despite the fact that, again, usually starts a sentence and there's no comma after the word. So we have despite the fact, there's no comma here. We always put the comma in between the two ideas. So despite the fact that I have no money, I still donate to charity. So they are opposite ideas, because usually if you have no money, you can't donate to charity. Okay, and this next one, despite, it is different from despite the fact. So we have despite the fact here, but despite just itself is different. Again, usually starts a sentence. There's no comma after the word, so there's no comma here. You can use despite in the middle of a sentence as well. Okay, but despite follows with a verb ing and no subject. So there's no subject after despite. It just goes straight into verb ing. So despite working all day, she still made dinner for her whole family. So there's no subject here. We just mentioned the subject in the second clause. Okay, and the last two, which are a little bit complicated and maybe not as common. So we have here albeit. Albeit is not as common, but still a good word. It's usually in the middle of a sentence. Usually in the middle of a sentence. And only mentioning a smaller contradiction. So the other two, the opposites were about the equal size, but we just mentioned something a bit smaller. Usually follows with a noun or an adjective. So, I have the worst headache ever, albeit only for a short time. So we're just mentioning one small contradiction here, that even though you have the worst headache, you've only had the headache for a short time. So you're kind of showing a small contradiction, albeit. And we can see that it goes after the comma and it's in the middle of the sentence. And the last one, in spite of the fact that, similar to despite the fact that, it's just less common. So usually at the start of a sentence, no comma after the word. So in spite of the fact that, there's no comma. English very hard. I still love it. So opposites.